All right. Well, welcome to the show. I typically start with asking people their why for competing in HYROX or like doing all the sport that they do. What is the motivating factor for it behind you?
Good morning, Greg, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast. So yeah, my reply to that question has been quite different throughout the years, I would say. It was quite a big difference from like 6, 7 years ago when I was competing in triathlon compared to now. So my why currently, of course, I really enjoy being a competitive athlete and I really enjoy the training and what comes with it. But my why, the last season has been so much more about the community and all the other athletes in obviously a lot HYROX that has bring so much value to me for keeping on going. So that's been my why, like recent year, I would say.
Okay. What you just touched on like triathlon. So is that your sporting background? Is that what you were doing before HYROX?
Yeah, partly. Yeah, I started actually. I did elite sport high school. I was playing handball for many years, like very competitive up to Division 1 in Sweden. Then I had like a period where I was going in more like to individual training and like those kind of more endurance-based events. So yeah, I started triathlon. I did triathlon for quite a while. I would reckon it was like almost 3 years, more or less full time. So I had like a quite extensive career, mostly short distance triathlon, but also half and full Ironmans I did. So definitely that's been a big part of my like training background as an athlete.
Okay. How old are you now? Can I ask?
28, 28.
Okay. Okay. And what was your like, so you were doing handball from a young age, were you? What were you doing like when you were very young as a kid growing up? Was that handball?
Yeah, it was a big part of it. But I mean, yeah, I was very active as a kid, as most of us athletes has been doing a lot of different like team sports. You know, handball, floorballs were also very big in Sweden, football, and also like a lot of different activities within. We had very active choices in schools. We had a lot of athletics as well. You know, so yeah, it was a very wide range of different sports. But yeah, handball was like what I was like focusing at in my like later teenage. So yeah.
Okay. I was doing some research for this and looking on your website and things, and it said you completed the legendary Swedish Classic in an unmatched 26 hours. Uh,
Yeah, so to make it as long story short, so it was actually when I was more and more competitive in triathlon, so I decided I'm going to do like the Ironman Pro division, which means you need to qualify at that time through the federation with like a good half Ironman distance time as I did back then. So I did that, and then when I was going to actually to US to do my first pro race, then the COVID hit. So obviously everything was canceled. So then I just wanted to figure out something to do like more for the partners I had back then. And like, I really want to like show what I'm capable of because I was very fit back then. So then I did the Swedish Classic event. So it's like what we call the Vätternrundan. It's a 300-kilometer bike around the big lake in Sweden. And it's ski 90 kilometers from Sälen to Mora, and then it's a 3 kilometer swim, Vansbrosimningen, and then it's the leading loppet as we call it. So it's about 30 kilometers trail running, and those four events are one of the largest events of its kind for exercisers. And usually people do those kind of events over a year. Then they have done the Swedish Classic. So it's like 4 different events. So I did those. I tried to do all of those races in 24 hours with a car transport between each one of them. And they are different located within the countries. We have like multiple hours of driving between the different events because I did all of them on the same locations as the race, obviously. And the skiing, it was like during the summer, so I did it on the roller skis, essentially. So I did it in, was it 26 hours in total, those 4 races. So that was something I did, I would say, for fun, but yeah, to try my capacity a little bit. So that was, yeah, it was a highlight, definitely.
okay. Was it brutal? Was it as hard as it sounds?
Yeah, I mean, it's very low intensity, obviously, when you do like one kind of things for 24 hours, you know, but I mean, the sleep is obviously one thing, you know, biking in the middle of the night, 9 hours by yourself in the dark. I mean, yeah, then a lot of minds comes to your head, definitely, but I think it was quite manageable. I was having a good team around me, so supporting me. So yeah, but of course it was tough, but yeah, it was manageable.
Okay. Uh, that maybe leads us into like talking about your training and you are known, I think, as a very high volume trainer. You do like a lot of hours every week. Can you tell us what like a typical day might be in hours, or like a typical week might be?
Yeah, definitely. I get the question a lot. And I think like from the start of this season now, my training is a little bit different from before, but it's obviously definitely with most people's perspective, a very high volume. But it's very simple as well. It's not complicated. I do a lot of time on the running and on the ergs, obviously. So I have 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when I do kind of a triple threshold day. So I do both run, row and ski. So 3 separate sessions usually. And then I'm in the mid zone, like what we usually call like the threshold zone. So I get 2.5 hours like in the training zone actively during those days. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that can be is very simple. I mean, usually 1Ks, 2Ks, 5K sometimes. You know, I'm very flexible and dynamic with how I approach each training session. But I'm focusing more and more now, like to get the time in the zone and have progression from week to week during those specific sessions. So how it looks like now, it's on the Mondays is 3-minute intervals, so it can be around 15 to 20 of 3 minutes per discipline. And on the Wednesday I do 5Ks on both, so 2 times 5K on the ski, on the row and on the run. And on the Friday it's a little bit more high intensity, so I go down to maybe 500 meters or 2 minutes intervals. So it's like still in the range of what you call threshold training. So not too hard, but definitely not easy, but very, very manageable also. And on the Tuesday and Thursday, those are also very similar training days. I have one strength session. I focus a lot on the deadlifts and the squats, basically, building up progressively. And then I have one more functional training where I incorporate running with usually just one of the HYROX movements. So usually it's the lunges or the wall balls, where I work more like with muscular fatigue and how to manage a little bit higher load on the stations combined with running, but quite like lower intensity running. So it's no hard running. It's just like focusing, get the volume and the muscular endurance for the station. So Tuesday and Thursdays are very similar training days. And those days, since I only have 2 more focus sessions, I always incorporate like a swim or a bike above that during the day when I feel it's a good timing. And on the Saturdays now, I definitely do a little bit of a heat run or a little bit lower intensity, longer run. I'm building it up steady. Apart from that, I have one training session, functional, or what I call it, like more functional stamina or conditioning workout, where I do a little bit more like HYROX specific stuff on the Saturday, but without running. So it's an erg or 1 or 2 station, around about 1 hour, medium intensity. And then I'll probably do a third low intensity session on the Saturday as well. And Sunday is always recovery for me. Today I did 45 minutes of run and row this morning, and I will go for like a swim later. So I always take it very easy on the Sundays as well. So yeah, this leads me up to, I'm building up a little bit in the volume now with around 25 hours currently, and I'll probably peak at around 32 hours by the end of this like training block. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. And is that a little bit less than you were doing previously? Is that a little bit less than you were doing for triathlon, or not?
Yeah, less than triathlon for sure, and definitely maybe in general a little bit less than last season as well. I think it's a little bit different structure where I have like those cardio specific days and those more like functional days. So overall, I think it's slightly lower volume, yes. But I would say like the time in the training zone around, I mean, the race specific training zone is quite similar, I would say, or even a little bit higher. But overall, a little bit lower, yeah.
What is the why do you do this volume? Is this what you think is optimal for HYROX? Is this what you think is optimal for your health? Is it like just like a mental thing because like you'd go crazy if you weren't training this much, or what's the thinking behind it?
Yeah, it's good reflections actually. Yeah, but, I've been reflecting over it many times, but I mean the basis, I have accumulated so much training volume over so long time. So for me and my body, it's very natural to have like a high activity level in general, you know, and since I come from more endurance-based triathlon background, I have a very good adaptation for handling high volume. But with that said, like to the general athlete and in general, I would say it's very individual if how you respond to like high volume and more high intensity work. So it's not like black and white. And I also seen like a little bit of headlines from, I think it was Tim, and also like, I know Alex, they also had like full-time jobs and did like train that many hours per week. And I think, I mean, that makes total sense in one way because we respond different to training. And I also think many times having high training volume also usually comes with a lot of stress, like not just training stress, but stress in general. Because obviously you need to have more time on the training and less time for other obligation. And most of athletes, they have some sort of other obligation, either if it's professional or what it is. So with that said, if you're increasing your training volume, I definitely think that in some cases it doesn't matter if you cannot handle like the adaptations and the stress that comes with it. So that's the short answer on how I think for the general athlete, like it's not black and white, but I do think, and that's my philosophy, that the more you can train and the more training you can adapt to, the better you can potentially become, talking more endurance-based sports. That's why we see the best triathletes in the world, they're having the highest training volume and they're having the highest energy expenditure over years, you know, because it's all about building that aerobic capacity. So I think that the more you can train, the better you can become. But as I said the other day, it doesn't necessarily mean that the more you train, the better you become, because you need to still do it very smart and do good choices and also be able to handle the training load that you are putting in. Yeah, but for me, it's very natural. I'm very well adapted to high training volume, but I'm also very versatile in my training. So I'm doing definitely a lot of different, let's say, sports. So obviously, if you're doing different things, you can accumulate more training load in total, right? Than if you're only doing running or only doing lifting, you know. So that's also one part. But I think it's very individual. So I know a lot of people, they take inspiration from me to like do more and more work. And I think it's good, you know. I think it's good that people try, but it always comes down to how you manage the effort. And it's not like I'm doing crazy amount of high intensity work either. So that's also a very important point. Because I mean, the higher volume you do, the lower intensity like you need to have. Because if you're doing these really hard sessions, if I was doing these really hard sessions, HYROX sessions that many athletes do every day, I would not be able to train as much as I do. So it's always about find the good intensity where you can have the most benefit for your race specificity.
Yeah. I was going to just touch on that as well, like ask you about like the balance between intensity and volume. And there were a couple of quotes which I think I saw on your Instagram. One was like, you're not training to be tired, like you're training for performance and adaptations. And another one was, do you train to win or train to suffer? Which I thought was interesting. But I guess you're saying, like, you went through your training week. Are you doing, because of that higher volume, are you not really going above threshold too much? Like you touched on, like your threshold sessions, are you not really, are you finding you're not going too far beyond that very often?
No, it's correct. It's not very often I do that. I usually have now I have every 5th week I have like my test. So it's like 5Ks on the Ergs and some strength tests and also running testing. And then of course the objective is to max out. But training in general, I don't schedule many sessions to be in zone 5 or like the red zone high intensity if we're talking like max or more than 90% of max heart rate. Sometimes I go there when I feel like it's a good day for it, but I schedule maximum 1 session maybe on the Friday when I have the shorter intervals, so that I can push maybe the last second or last quarter of the session up to the zone 5, but it's very limited amount, because I think it can be very beneficial from different perspective, like from a biomechanical perspective, from more like a power output perspective, but it also comes with a lot of, I would say, risk, and it comes with a lot longer recovery time from those sessions. So I know when I'm redlining, I usually do that on the Friday or Saturday, because then I know I have recovery day after. Because if I start into redlining too early in the week, you know, then I will like have a stagnation throughout the week. So yeah, I'm very careful with that training, to be honest. I mean, before and when I was young, that was never the case. I mean, if I didn't go to zone 5 every session, I mean, the session was a failure because you didn't work hard enough. But that's completely different shift now. And if you're going to build something progressive, you need to handle that high intensity work carefully, I think.
Mm-hmm. You just touched on some test protocols that you do every 5 weeks. Can you tell us a bit more about those? Like, is that something that you're using to track your progress in training? And like, what are those protocols, and like, why have you
Yeah.
chosen those distances? Like, why 5K, for example?
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question. So those, like, I've done it a lot before, but now it's even more structured this season, I would say. So it's a 5K on the ski, 5K on the row, it's a 10K run, it's a 10 repetition deadlift, and it's a 10 repetition barbell bench press. So those are those benchmark tests I will have throughout the 50 weeks now, or the year leading up to next year's World Championships. And I think the distance is quite relevant to the specificity for the capacity we're racing in. We're talking like the run and the ergs and the time domain, and definitely the intensity. I think, like, in general, people test like 2Ks and 1Ks. I think it's a little bit too relevant for our sport. I mean, you can measure your power output and more like your anaerobic effort, but if you want it to be like in the context of HYROX or endurance, you need to like higher the distance or duration a little bit more. So I also done like 10Ks a lot, but what I think, like, with even though longer distances on the Ergs, like 10K, it's a lot of mental, you need a lot of mental capacity that comes into those kind of testing events. So I think like 5K is a good trade-off, because you still want to feel focused and like very mentally engaged and that you are able to push yourself throughout the test. And 10K can get a little bit long, and then we can obviously not measure the psychological part of training in that case. So I think like 5K is even more manageable in terms of the psychology or sport psychology or performance psychology. And I think it's relevant. Like the 5K pace is definitely, I would say, for elite or very competitive athletes, it's a good measurement of your maybe race pace, while 10K, I would say, maybe is for most athletes a little bit more relevant, because if you're a little bit more competitive and a little bit more elite, you can handle that anaerobic load a little bit more. So I think definitely it's specific or relevant to the race demands, and for the strength, it's more like to have a progression continuously in the strength training. It's not like directly transferable to the race, obviously, but I also think like having max effort on the sled, for example, comes with a lot of risk and creates a lot of stress on definitely the lower legs. So I didn't find that very relevant. And I think deadlift, I mean, it's one of the obviously best foundation strength exercises you can do functionally. And then also I want to incorporate something for the upper body to measure my overall fitness and body strength. So yeah, that's the science. That's the philosophy regarding it. And it's, I mean, even if it's not like directly transferable to the race, it's also definitely necessary to have tests to measure progress in training over time.
Yeah. Can you give us an indication of where you were for your 5K and 10Ks most recently?
Yeah, so on the Ergs, I have done a 5K. Let's talk in terms of time per 500, because I think it makes more sense to people than like the total distance. So I've done a 5K ski in 141 pace. I've done a 10K ski in 144 pace. I've done a 5K row in 138 pace and a 10K row in 142 pace. So that's where I've been at the Ergs, and I'm trying to build from that now. And that's obviously very competitive and very, very solid numbers. But yeah, it's not like directly transferable to HYROX, but it's definitely good numbers.
And your running, your 10K run?
Yeah, so I'm doing that one actually on the treadmill, because I think it makes much more sense to do it on the treadmill or maybe the track, to have it like very measurable over time, and you can control out the other factors like heat and wind and so on. You don't need to focus on it. So I did the other week, when I did like the first benchmark test, I did a 3:15 per kilometer on the 10K, and I mean, that's okay, definitely in the beginning of the season. So I'll try to get some sub 30 on the treadmill on the 10K during the next 50 weeks. But I do think it's like, for me as a heavier athlete, I have a lot more benefit on the treadmill than outside. So there's definitely quite a lot of percent that I will lose when going like out in the real life or on the race. But yeah.
Okay, nice. I was gonna ask you about the treadmill. Actually, I think I've seen you say somewhere that you do a fair amount of work on the treadmill because you're a heavier athlete and it helps to manage the leg fatigue. Like, do you think that's an important consideration that a lot of HYROX athletes should be thinking about, like doing work on the treadmill to manage that side of things?
That's a good question. I think, yeah, just to touch on it, for me, I feel like I can get so much more training time in my, like, let's say, threshold zone on the treadmill compared to the track, for the same amount of like muscular fatigue. So let's say if I go to the track and do 15 times 400 in the threshold zone, I can feel quite damaged the day after. Or if I do the same amount of work on the treadmill, I feel very fresh. I can do almost double the work on the treadmill compared to outside for the same amount of leg fatigue. And for the general athlete, I think the benefits of using a treadmill is definitely you save your legs and your muscles a little bit on the regular treadmill. So you get less leg fatigue. And it's also very measurable to do the tests on the treadmill and like have a progression over time. Because if you're running outside, there's always different factors. You have the elevation, you have the wind, you have the humidity, you have the heat and everything. And that will always affect your pace. That's why it's usually quite hard to measure if you're going to have a strict protocol from week to week, have a progression. It's definitely more challenging to have a linear progression outdoor than on the treadmill. And that's natural. And you can also have hydration and stuff on the treadmill as you wish. So I do think it's beneficial to have like one benchmark treadmill sessions a week. I do think that, especially because we are also in demand of a lot of lower body work as more hybrid HYROX athletes. We need to get the training in as well. So if we can save the legs, that's good. But we're not racing on a treadmill, so it's definitely necessary to run as much as you can. I mean, outside, especially if you're a beginner or if you're new. I mean, as long as you have like a running capacity so you can run outside, you should build it from there, you know. I think that's definitely the best. Then if you have any injuries, they can also be beneficial to use the treadmill like to build up steady. But running outside, definitely, I mean, it's tougher to run outside than on the treadmill if you're doing flat zero incline on treadmill. So for me, it's usually like around 4-minute pace is like 10 beats per minute in difference, and that's quite significant difference. And you also obviously have a little bit of different stride in general on the treadmill than outside. So it's a lot of different considerations. But I think you can do both. I definitely think you can do both, and you can have great benefits from having a strict protocol and having good progression on the treadmill. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to ask you as well about your erging and your erg training. Like those numbers that you mentioned are very impressive. And I think we first like came into contact when you were racing for Sweden last year in the relay team, and like you sort of, my perception of you at the time at least was like you were an erg specialist. Like you had some very good erg times. What does your training look like on those? Is it a mix of like slow and steady and threshold and higher intensity stuff on the ergs as well?
I would say almost all my time on the ergs is like in the threshold zone. So I divide my training in essentially 3 zones now. It's low intensity, medium intensity, and high intensity. So everything is almost at the zone 2. I do, like as I mentioned earlier, on the Tuesdays, on the Thursdays, I do 30 minutes of easy on the ski or the row, just like to get some activation and to promote the recovery. But otherwise, almost everything is at those zones. Almost everything.
Okay. So I think I'm right in saying that you don't do much like mixed erg work. Like your erg work is pure standalone. You're doing like HYROX style workouts with the ergs. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think that's the recipe for how I become so good at the ergs. But generally speaking, I think many athletes in general, they mix up too much of the stations and the work, you know, and it's hard to measure the intensity and your effort, and it's also very hard to have a progression over time when you're always combining so many different movements and stations. For example, I usually, as I said before, I usually do maximum 1 more movement with my erging. Otherwise, it's just pure erg training. Because the focus for me now in the erging is like to building the aerobic capacity. I don't necessarily need to do any other stations. I mean, it can be beneficial from a psychological perspective to like keep the training interesting. But if you really want to get good on one of the ergs, or if it's a station, you need to focus on that particular discipline, and then you need to have a measure your effort and have a progression over time. That's how you become good. Because if you're always combining your 20 calorie or 400 meter row with the lunges one day, and like the burpee broad jumps the other day. It's very hard to measure like your progression, your effort, your heart rate, and also in terms of finding like the rhythm in the stroke. Then you need to like really focus on that movement for a longer period of time, day after day, week after week, month after month. Then you can like become really good at something. So I do almost all of my erg training like solely focusing on the intervals on the screen.
Okay,
great.
I appreciate this is a difficult question to answer, but is there anything that people get wrong that you think on the ergs in general? Like, and I'm sure there's lots really, but is there one or two things?
Yeah, of course, damn days are coming. I mean, I get the question very a lot, and I was speaking about it a lot. I mean, I'm very, very open with and transparent to say with, I think that everyone has their own stroke, you know. There is no like single recipe for how to row or how to ski, but there are like a few very important like biomechanical factors that you need to have like in consideration when you're doing the movement to benefit from your power output as good as possible, obviously. But yeah, in general, people have a too high damper setting and they get too much fatigue in their bodies before they can utilize the cardiovascular capacity. A very good example is I usually take like when you're walking up the stairs at home, if you take like double steps with your feet, you will feel like you're fatiguing in your thighs earlier than if you are running up the stairs. But you might move with the same speed, but you will have a higher heart rate using the smaller step but faster steps compared to if you're taking the longer steps, right? So you're accumulating fatigue or lactate acid in your body. So the optimal damper setting, I mean, there is no optimal damper setting. I've worked myself to be very efficient in a low damper setting. I use 2.5 or between 2 and 3 in training. That's my optimal range. But the optimal damper setting is the damper setting when you can utilize the maximum of your cardiovascular capacity without being limited by fatigue or lactic acid in your body. So it definitely comes down to what duration you're training for. I mean, obviously the lower duration or distance you go, the higher damper you can go, because then you can utilize more of your like power and mechanical effort, and you don't need to rely on having like a stable heart rate for a longer period of time. Yeah, so the damper setting is one thing, but I think everybody should just try work with different damper settings, see how it feels. You know, we're all different, and I'm definitely think there is no damper setting for all of us. But I see that a lot of people, they're having a too high damper, and it also limits their stroke efficiency a lot, not just muscular fatigue. Other than that, I think in general people have too little times on the ergs to learn how to move on them. As I said before, combining all these workouts, I mean, you really need to like take time with the machine and try to evaluate and feel how it works with you, how you can work with the machine, how you can catch the cord in the right moment, and so on. So like really learn how to move where it feels the best and evaluate your heart rate, your drag factor, your damper setting. So I think way too many athletes have too little time on the machines to even evaluate what feels best for them. So that's one thing you need to, if you want to become good at something, you really need to whatever it is, like in training, you need to take time to evaluate and find your way for it. Yeah, but I see like more practical, I see a lot of people, they ending up behind their bodies with their arms when they're stroking, what I call like the ski jumper. We're very ineffective like behind the bodies, so I always try to talk with my athletes about being close to the body all the time so we can have activation in the core. So always try to work close in front of the body with the arms on the ski, for example. That's very important, I would say, and to always like work with a machine. Same with the ski, that we're like having the cords going towards the wheels in the top of the ski all the time, so we're not ending up somewhere behind the head. You know, it's also very common. It's like pure physics. You need to move in the direction of the machine in order to be as efficient as possible. And same with the rower. We have the chain moving, and it has a straight line into the, you know, the hole we have in the rower. But then we still see a lot of athletes like moving it so much up and down during the movement, costs a lot of energy. So it's very simple things to practice, like to move with the machine, because it's all physics, it's all like mechanics it comes down to. So it comes a lot from like common sense, to see and feel how the machine is working, how the power, how the air flows, and so on in the machine. So yeah, it's some of those factors, but it comes down to like more biomechanics and how to move with the machine and try to get to know the machine. So I think, yeah, that's some small tips. And I mean, I have more on my Instagram if you want to dive into it, but more time on the machine, in general, lower damper, and yeah, find rhythm and like a flow in the movements. That's my
Okay.
my
Nice,
tip.
nice. Okay. Do you have a coach that writes your programming or not?
No, I'm self-coached. I've always been self-coached, actually. I obviously had a lot of people around me from both triathlon and when I went to elite sport high school, a lot of good coaches from different sports. So I always have a very good network of other coaches from other sports. I wouldn't say consulting with, but definitely sharing experiences and thoughts with. But no, I'm always been self-coached, and I'm currently also self-coached.
This might be a silly question after like talking about all your training and volume and everything, but your mantra, your saying, if you like, is get to work. Is that where is that come from? What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, yeah, I checked it the other week. So the first time I like mentioned it officially was in September last year. So it's not like that old, but I mean the concept or the slogan, or what you want to call it, which is now grown to more like my brand and like international business. But the basics of the concept is obviously not just training. It definitely comes with discipline. It comes with doing good decisions. It comes with stop procrastinating and start working and doing what you want to accomplish, you know. But I want to be very clear with this, not just training. It's not just get to the gym. It's whatever you want to do in life, take action. And it might not always be easy, but you need to get to work and take the step in the right direction every day if you want to accomplish or getting where you want in life, you know. So it's much bigger than just training. It's very focused on, obviously, for my communication out in my Instagram and so on, because that's what most people I'm communicating with is athletes at some point, and I do think it's a lot of part in general. But the concept is that take action and get to work and go after what you want to accomplish, you know. So it's a little bit wider than just training, but it's like a mindset, definitely, to be very, very task oriented, and to really be committed to your vision and your aspirations in life.
Okay, nice. Just before we leave the training side of things, I just want to ask about heat training as well. I think you've posted you do some heat training sometimes on your Instagram. Can you talk a bit more about that, the benefits of that, and how you're approaching that?
Yes, definitely. I think it's very interesting because it's obviously very new in the hybrid space, I would say. It's a very few athletes that like regularly does it and have the knowledge about it. But I mean, it's been known and in practical use in like more endurance sports for a very long time. So just short, like what is heat training, or why it is important? Because, for example, when we are exercising or we're moving, we are doing HYROX, we're running. 80% or 80 to maybe 75% of the energy we're consuming is going to thermoregulation in the body. That's how insufficient the body is to generate energy to actual power or propulsion or sled push or running. Because when we're burning, let's say 1 gram of carbohydrate, that's 4 calories. So that's 16 kilojoules. And we know that 1 watt is 1 joule per second. So that's how we transfer like the actual energy gel into power on the Erg, for example. So 80% of that energy goes to thermoregulations. So if we burn 1 gram of carbohydrate, 14 kilojoules, we have 3.7 kilojoules left for work. So that's why heat training is important. So what you can do with heat training is to essentially learn your body how to handle the heat even more, which is even more important when you're obviously racing in a hot and humid climate. It's not only about the temperature, it's always also about the humidity. It's more of what you call like a heat index. So if you have a high humidity and a high temperature, the heat index will get even higher. But you can also have a quite high temperature with a low humidity, and the heat index or the heat strain is not that high. So it's always consideration. But in HYROX, in regular, we have both, right? We have a lot of humidity with thousands of athletes, spectators, and we also have quite high temperature. I mean, not high compared to like marathons in the desert, but it's still a good amount of heat index that most of athletes aren't really adapted to training or performing. So what you do with heat training, you can measure your core body temperature, which you can do with a sensor, and then you can more like base your training on different heat zones. So you have different heat stress on your body during different workouts. And then you focus more on like having a certain core body temperature, could be like race temperature if you have measured it. So you try to accumulate training within the heat zone that you want to race in. And then you can obviously learn to be, or you can train your body to become more efficient handling heat and thermoregulation. And then we can have better efficiency, a better metabolic efficiency when it comes to training and racing in general, not just in heat, but in general. And we learn also how to evaporate sweat and to work more with the cardiovascular system more effectively. And also, I've been thinking of this a lot because it's very unknown I would say unknown in our community and in our space. It was also very interesting. You see, I mean, the HYROX Berlin is the fastest HYROX in the world, right? Still, I guess. And everybody's talking about, is the course, is it too short, and so on. But I've been quite confident from the beginning. It makes total sense. You know, last year, I reckon it was like, was it 15, 16 degrees there last year? Yeah. And I mean, that's like the optimal temperature to perform in, you know. So for me, it makes total sense that the times were so rapid there, you know, because take that, you being outside, you have the wind, your body can cool down properly. I'm not surprised that the fastest times were done in Berlin. And also this year, obviously, I'm not sure if the temperature were that low this year, but for me, it's super clear why it goes so fast. Because also the general athlete, they are not used to race in indoor venue with so many athletes, high humidity, usually quite high temperature. So, I mean, yeah, I've been thinking of it a lot, and it's quite interesting. And also, the HYROX world record when Hunter did it in Stockholm was also a cold December morning in Stockholm, the first event of the day before all the age groups or rest of the athletes started, and it was quite cold there. I'm quite certain it was, at least the day before. I wasn't there in the morning. Also makes total sense, because that's how much heat affects our performance. Also, like a good comparison, then I'm going to stop talk about heat, but for marathon runners, also very, very measurable. And when you have like the heat index charts and so on. So let's say for a 3-hour marathon runner who does a 3-hour marathon in like optimal temperature around 15 degrees, add 15 degrees outside, or let's say the similar amount of heat index strain to the runner, and this will decrease the performance, like in theory, with maybe 7 to 10 seconds. 7 to 10 minutes over the marathon distance, and that's quite big difference. So it's like 2 to 6% or something. So yeah, that's why heat is so important, and that's why I do it from time to time. But what you need to also remember when you're adding more stress to your system with heat, or what it is. So if you're training in a heat suit, or if you come here to train, or go abroad, or you go to Middle East or Dubai or to train, that there's an extra layer of stress to your system. So you cannot count that you can have the same power output for the same heart rate that you have in the UK in the early summer, or in the Nordic countries, because it will decrease your performance quite significantly, and also like the power output. So that you also need to have in mind if you're going to try like heat training, because it definitely stresses your system even more, cardiovascular system. Okay. Yes.
I agree with what you're saying about the courses, by the way. I've thought this for a long time, that, you know, I think people get hung up on how many laps there are, and like, oh, Berlin was quick because it was 1 lap and all these things. But like the reality is, like, I've seen a lot of venue maps, and you can almost never guess when it's going to be a quick course or not. And I think because the temperature plays such a huge part. And I remember the elite race in Glasgow last season, I was commentating, and I remember before saying like it is so cold in here, like we had to go get a top to put on, and like that turned out to be like a really quick course for the elites, and they had like 4 laps to do, and there was so many turns and everything like that, and you could have never predicted that it was going to be quick unless like you were there and you felt the temperature.
No, and everybody's like, you know, why is it so quick? Because yeah, people don't understand it or don't know it is, and I mean it makes sense, but yeah, for me it's very obviously. And when you confirm it with the Glasgow, I also thought about Glasgow, how was it there, and so on, and yeah, then it makes total sense.
Yeah. Just let's get into HYROX a little bit. Most recently, you were the Swedish relay captain at the World Championships, and you finished 6th there, which is like really good result. How was that experience like? Was that good fun?
Yeah, so I did it last year as well, and definitely a very good experience. I was very confident with the team leading up to the race. You know, we had, I mean, obviously no pure elite athletes in our team, very unknown like athletes, but we have quite good athletes in Sweden, and I was very confident with this team we can do a very solid result, you know. Especially the ladies, they were really quick runners as well. So I was confident leading up to the race, definitely. So we are very satisfied with the result and the experience. I'm not personally super impressed by my result because, yeah, I was obviously very fatigued from my solo race a couple of hours before. But as a team, we did very good, and it was super. Yeah, it was a good experience, and also I think like the other teams, there was like a good atmosphere. Yeah, quite a lot of competitiveness, as we know, but I think it was a very good experience, and we are super happy with that result. That's I mean, I wouldn't say small nation in HYROX, but definitely seen to like the level of the athletes from a more individual perspective, our result is remarkable. So yeah, I'm very happy with that.
Okay. Did I see that you'd like part of the selection process for the team was just simply a 2K run? And like you had to submit your time for that. Was that?
Yeah, definitely.
I've seen people put more complicated workouts up and things like that, but you just kept it relatively simple, did you, with the 2K run?
Yeah, definitely. I think like the time domain is very relevant, and I mean the running is probably where you need to have the biggest capacity to be a good relay player, because it was not only based on the 2K, obviously, because then you need to match the 2K or the runner with a specific functional background or what it is into the context of the HYROX, compared to what stations you have left from or what stations you can choose between. So it's like a puzzle, obviously. It's quite complicated when you think of it, where you can win more and less and so on, female, male. Yeah, but 2K, I think it's very relevant, you know. I think you can keep it very simple. I mean, it's all about aerobic and almost anaerobic effort for 6 to 8 minutes, you know. And if you can run for that pace, for that duration, you can obviously have that as a race pace, and you can put out definitely the same effort on the station for that time duration. So for me, it's very simple. But it was not like solely to the 2K, the fastest 2K comes into the team. But I was also like to include a larger selection of athletes from other sports that's not so familiar with maybe HYROX in general, but also coming from other sports. So I had like a very solid result from like skiers and also triathletes coming in, and it was also like to be more of inclusive, like everybody has a shot. I mean, you need to be able to handle obviously 2 stations also, but I mean, if you have the potential or the background to handle a farmer's carry and let's say a sled push, I mean, it's not that hard to learn. We had quite short time though, but then you can still go a very good effort. So I think, yeah, it was more like to have an inclusive, open process, but it was not definitely the only metric or the only decision criteria I had. But I think it was a very relevant test.
Okay, and then from a individual perspective in HYROX, how do you think about your season just gone? Like, are you pleased with where you're at and your progress, and like, do you have aspirations for the Elite 15?
So I mean, starting this season was quite like unwritten book for me. Obviously, I know I had the potential. I've done some good progression. I did my first HYROX December 23, so I've been in the sport like 1.5 years. And then I obviously did quite a lot of races in the beginning to like more learn and adapt. And I think it's very important in the beginning when you start with a new sport, like try to get a little bit of race experience and to find your like baseline. before you start to build on it. And then I obviously had some really solid results when I did the Malaga, not least, where I did double pro and finished with the 56:32, which still is a very competitive men pro result.
I should just say there for people that aren't sure, by double pro you mean you ran two individual pro races, like one on like the Friday and one on the Saturday, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I can take it short, the story. I mean, this weekend was more of a training weekend for me. I had like a 20-hour training week leading up to it. We went to Malaga. I did a men pro on the Friday. I did a 58:40, I think, which was a PB for me. So I did a PB in the men pro on the Friday, and then on the Saturday I had a 10K row in the morning, just to more recovery, but also again it was not like super. I wasn't super focused that I'm gonna do a new PR on a Saturday evening, but went there, you know, no expectations. I had a very like relaxing day, like really like almost vacation mode, you know. And I went there and I did a 56:32 and I won the race. So I had like 2 podiums over the weekend and 2 PB over 2 races. So I'm obviously very satisfied with that. What I can say about that, you know, people tell me, and I get a lot of messages because people care, and I really appreciate that. They say, don't you think you can go faster if you rest a little bit more? And a lot of those messages, and that's very nice, you know, because people want me to do well, obviously. And just to touch on that a little bit, I think obviously I've proven to myself and to others that performance isn't solely about like trying to find the peak physical condition of yourself, because that's obviously extremely hard to do. So always, if I'm racing, if it's like a race or a B race, doesn't matter. I mean, the best thing you can do is try to really feel relaxed and feel confident, you know, either if you do it with training, if you do it like thinking on something else, spending time with friends, whatever. I think you like to really get into that confidence, and also like finding kind of like peace and confidence in your own ability to perform, because I don't think performance is like black and white either. And I also probably, it's quite remarkable what I did that weekend with so much training as well, like both from a physical but also from a psychological perspective. So when it comes to racing a performance, I think everybody needs to find their own way how to perform. And it's not just like to do something because the science says one thing or something, or some coach says how you're going to do, you know. So I think you need to be very, very humble regarding that, really leading up to races. But from a physical standpoint, I think that most people, they rest too much leading up to races. I think you need to stay more active to have like a good recovery and metabolism, and also for the digestive system leading up to races, so you're not like trapping down too much the days before and lay on the couch and eat pasta and think that everything is going to be okay. I think you need to stay active. That's very important. But of course, you should be physically rested and recovered. That's for sure if you're going to peak perform. So yeah.
Okay.
Long story short.
Yeah. It's amazing. Just going back to the question around the Elite 15, is that a goal? Is that a goal for like this coming season?
Yes, it is. It has not been the goal like the last season. To be honest, I've been really interested in the Elite 15 because I think that's not been my motivation or my drive in the sport. And I was, before leading up to Barcelona Lens qualifier, I didn't feel like super excited, because I decided before that I'm not going to take the spot if I get it, because it didn't feel like a good time, and that's not why I'm doing this at the current moment. But for the coming season, yes, definitely. I mean, I have a lot of other values to be in the sport, and other reasons to be in the sport. But definitely, one of my main goals is to be as good as I can as an athlete. Definitely. So my objective is obviously to make it to Stockholm next year, and the ultimate goal is, of course, to win the HYROX World Championships next year in Stockholm. There is no greater vision or goal maybe in my career than to win World Championships on home soil. And I think, you know, I know I have a very good capacity, but it always comes down to what I can perform on race day. And I think if you can envision that goal, and you can have like that very clear vision of what you want to accomplish. I've been at the venue, you know, as well, and I know what's to come. And if you can articulate it and you can really like feel that you have support from others around you, I definitely think you can come there. So that's my goal for the coming 15 weeks. So that's why I have this 15-week training plan now leading up to Stockholm next year. To prove to myself and that I can accomplish that. So that's my goal.
Okay, amazing. In terms of your mindset during a race and during like these tough long training sessions, where does your mind go to help you in those tough moments?
You know, it's an interesting question, and I've been thinking about it a lot because I've heard you talking to other athletes about it, and I think it's very interesting to hear athletes replying to this question. My reply to that is I try when it gets tough to not let my mind go anywhere else. You know, I usually ask myself in those moments when the heart rate is like 185 and it's tough as hell, you know, like what's the worst thing that can happen now? What's the worst thing that can happen now? Am I going to die? No. What's the worst thing? It's just a feeling. It's just a perception of something that's being really tough for you. But you know, the perception of like exhaustion or the perception of having it really tough is so it's so much psychology. So I try to stay within myself as much as possible and just to evaluate those thoughts all the time. I don't want my mind to go somewhere else to think of like some enjoyment or some family or some external factors. I really want to keep everything in my head, evaluate the feelings, and try to like convince myself that, I mean, this is just a feeling. I mean, everything is all right. You're just pushing through the pain, and that's totally fine, you know. That's what we train for. That's what we're doing. So it's nothing dangerous. And that's also why I think I like doing so much training on the Ergs, you know, because it's very at the screen all the time. There's no distractions. You have your eyes on the screens for hours. And you see your every stroke, what's the pace, what's the heart rate compared to like running. Then you can be outside, you can see things. Like to stay very focused and just evaluating the effort all the time. And I think it's very interesting. I've done quite a lot of like investigation on my own psychology and also studied it quite a lot in sports and general, you know. And it's very important to evaluate, I think, how those emotions, like physical and mental pain, as we call it. And what you're doing with this information. So yeah, I try to stay within myself. I evaluate the pain. I convince myself there is nothing dangerous, and I live with the pain and the suffering. Yes.
Okay, I like that. A few people have spoken on here about like a similar thought process. It's almost like your interpretation of the pain. Like if you're like, oh, this could kill me, then you will back off. But if you're like more observing it and there's not too much judgment around the pain, then like your reaction to it can be different. So
yeah, exactly.
Do you have a favorite sporting experience through your life?
Yeah, actually I have. I mean, before HYROX, I think when I was racing in triathlon, I think I had quite solid results from the start, but I felt like I didn't achieve like what I wanted to accomplish. But then I had a very good race when I won the Stockholm Triathlon on the Olympic distance. I would think it was 2017 or 2018 or something. Which at the time was the Sweden's largest triathlon over the Olympic distance. So that was a very good achievement, and I had a very good support with my family on site. I was racing like close to where I live in central Stockholm, you know, and it was a very good and quite emotional experience to take that win. So the win of Stockholm Triathlon was definitely one of the highlights of my career.
Okay. How about your toughest sporting experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's physical tough is one thing, mental tough is another one. I think in terms of if you combine the both, I had a really tough experience doing an Ironman in Taiwan many years ago with very tough and hot conditions. From a mental standpoint, it was definitely tough. And from a physical, obviously, but there was so many factors playing against me that day, and almost to that extent that I like obviously I'm not a quitter, but I almost wanted to quit, and I usually don't go near that limit, you know. When you start really doubting yourself and your ability and all your training you have done throughout the years, one of those moments. So that's definitely one of the toughest experience I've had.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about training, but is there something that you think you believe in your training or performance that a lot of people would disagree with?
I wouldn't say disagree. I think it's a lot of common sense in what I do, and it's very simple. But I think I know that not all people resonate with high volume for different reasons. But I think in general, I mean, I resonate very good with my community, and I think it's a lot of sense in what I do because it's very simple, it's very measurable, it's not complicated. It's not like based on trends. It's quite like traditional, you know, what I do, and I believe in hard work and progression and of course good commitment in terms of those stuff. But I know like people think I train too much, and maybe that's one thing people disagree with. But both from like a positive and negative standpoint, like people want me to do well. But also, I mean, to some extent, I also, when I communicate with a lot of athletes, they say, oh, yeah, I want to try to do this. Yeah, let's say 5 times 5K, you know. Yeah, but then maybe the communication for me needs to be like, maybe you shouldn't do that, but you need to build it progressively over time. And that's, I'm also very open and it's very clear with, like, you cannot take my training and start doing it by yourself. You can take more like my philosophy and more like my structure, and you can start from your level and build it by yourself. Because it can obviously easily get to that point where people try to do the same training or same sessions that they see their like idols or influencers or world champions do, right? And it's not like I'm the only one. And I also heard like Hunter talking about it in his race reflections. I mean, you cannot just take my training and put it to your training schedule, because I have accumulated 10,000 hours of training over 10 years to get to this point, to be able to handle this load without any injuries. So I mean, in that standpoint, I mean, if you're smart and you're listening to what I'm saying, there is no confusion regarding this. But if you just like see a session and you think I'm a cool and good athlete, it's, of course it can be a little bit problematic in some cases. So that's why I'm trying to be very transparent with, I mean, you need to start at your own level and build progressively. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, awesome. Well, thank you for this. What are your race plans? Where will we see you next in HYROX?
Yeah, so why not make it official? I will go to Mexico to do my first HYROX of the season. So that's been like 19 or 20 weeks after my first training block now from Chicago. So I will go to an altitude camp in Mexico for probably 5 weeks. I will go do the HYROX Mexico. It would be more like a B race. And the weekend after, I will fly down to Chicago to do the Chicago HYROX the weekend after. So I'm coming straight from altitude. We'll fly down maybe the same day or the day evening before, and go straight into sea level and do a race on HYROX Chicago.
Okay, nice, awesome. All right, well, amazing. Thank you for this. Is there anything else I should have asked you? And then also, like, if people want to follow you, find out more about you, where should they go?
No, I've spoken long enough, I think. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. Publish almost all my training. So athlete Hugo, my name is on Instagram, and I also have a YouTube channel posting regularly or irregularly videos, some from my training days, some about in Q&A. So you get quite a lot of good insights by following my Instagram and my YouTube on my life and my training. And you can definitely learn a lot. I try to educate a lot in my communication because I think it creates good value. So yeah, that's where you find both knowledge and some training inspiration.
Awesome. Well, yeah, there's been a ton of great stuff in this. There is a ton of great stuff on your Instagram and YouTube. I've certainly been watching a lot of it, so thank you. And yeah, good luck for the season.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks seeing you. Take care.